Hello, and welcome to another edition of Tribulation Ready Survival. I'm Michael. This is the 10th try at me trying to give my testimony. I have been trying to do this, and it always seems like the evil one is trying to keep me from doing this. This is like my 5th try today. It's always been today, anyways. Lawnmowers, weed eaters, another lawnmower. The phone or the thing I'm recording on ran out of power. People walking in here and opening doors and it disturbing me. And so, guys, I want to get this done because I think that it's important, not only because God has told me to do it, but because I think it's important for you to know who's on this channel. I'm putting out information that I believe to be true to the best of my knowledge, and I think that it's information that's important to you and information that may be relevant to the tribulation as it starts to unfold in front of us, guys. So here's how it goes. My testimony. 3 weeks ago, I was fishing, and I do a lot of fishing until it gets really cold, and then I don't want to be fishing out miserably cold. But I've been doing a lot of fishing, and oftentimes when I sit out and do some fishing, I'm often by myself, and I do a lot of talking with God. I sit there and I fish, of course, but it's some alone time where I can sit and just talk to God about everything in my life. And, it's an intimate time where I can sit there and talk to Him about things that are bothering me, questions that I have. I mean, it's all kinds of things. And I don't necessarily hear all the answers. I hear bits and pieces. I've been praying for better discernment to be able to hear these things. But 3 weeks ago, it was probably 10:30, 11 o'clock at night-ish. It was pitch black dark. And I'm out fishing, and I got my headlamp on, and not much was going on, and I was talking with God, and I was really convicted that I'm supposed to tell you my testimony. So I'm going to do that, but it's not easy for me. It's nothing, awesome, or you're not going to get any. Awesome. That's great. That's, you're not going to get any of that here. It's kind of mundane, I guess. There'll be some generalities, and I'm trying not to avoid here. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started, guys. So I was a fairly regular kid. I played sports, did some bowling and things like that as a kid. Lots of soccer and baseball and, your regular stuff. And my father was in the military, and we moved around a lot. And so I never really had a whole lot of friends for very long. And, of course, when you're a kid, you just move on and find new friends. It's not a thing. But I found myself I found myself actually going to a church after my father got out of the military. I found myself going to church for many years. And I went to that church, and it was very lukewarm. It was a Free Methodist church. And I'm going to say that it's the longest time I went to a church, so I'm going to just say that's what I grew up in. And it was lukewarm, guys. There was Christmas and Easter and even Halloween parties. I'm like, and I never really got much. I never really got into those. I mean, as a Halloween thing. The most creative I ever got was I would throw on a pair of sweatpants and carry a soccer ball and say I was a soccer player. That's how creative I was. I really didn't enjoy doing Halloween, and I really wasn't really into getting candy or anything like that, and it was not a lot of joy. And matter of fact, it was kind of scary with some of the things that people dressed up as. And I've never been a scary movie kind of guy. Christmas, my family celebrated Christmas, and they told us the lie of Santa Claus and coming down the chimney, which we never had a chimney growing up, and they never could explain to me how he got in the house. And my parents lied to me for many, many years. And even in junior high, they still tried to push the Santa Claus thing, and I knew better. And you know, it kind of put another layer of distrust between me and my parents. But the same church that I grew up in, just about every year they had a church summer camp. And I went to church summer camp almost every year. And I think the reason my parents sent me to summer camp was basically so they wouldn't have me in the house. I don't think that it was me being in that house was not a good situation. In fact, in my freshman, somewhere between junior high and my freshman year of high school, my sister was removed from the home permanently because of the abuse that was going on in the home, and the authorities that were at that point decided that I should stay in the home, and so I did. And that's kind of where when you grow up, some of you can maybe attest to this. When you grow up in a situation, it doesn't matter what it is, a certain religious belief or an abusive situation or a whatever, pick a situation. When you grow up with that and it's every day, all day, constant, that's just how life is. That's what you know to be a normal thing, a regular everyday activity. And when other people don't do it, you think they're weird. That's just life. That's the way things really are. What you think you do, what you grow up in, and you have been thinking this is normal, that's what you're comfortable with. And I grew up in an abusive home. And I thought, okay, well, this is how things go. Well, it didn't take very long for me to realize, at a very, very low level, that the situation that was abusive in my home wasn't as abusive if I wasn't there. So I really got into doing a lot of sports. I got into track and field, and I really got into cycling. In fact, on almost any weekend when it wasn't below freezing, you would see me riding around town, the town that I grew up in, and I would do a 30 or 40 mile day. I would just put on the miles. Sometimes I would even go a little bit further, and come home after dark. But I was gone. If I could find going to a friend's house, spending the night over there, sometimes it was just a church activity that was an overnight thing. Whatever I could do, whatever I could find to get out of the house, I was all for it. I don't care how stupid it seemed. It was. I wasn't home, and that was a good thing. That my brain was putting me in a situation that was a healthier situation of not being home. So, mind you, summer camp, 1992, I was in a church camp in Colorado, in the mountains. And just like any other church camp any other year, they have church services once a day or twice a day or whatever the thing is. But it was in the evening that we had a church service where we did some praise and worship, and they asked afterwards if, like they did at every summer camp, if anybody wanted to accept Christ into their heart. And there was no pomp, no circumstance, no fanfare, no ticker tapes, or nothing like that. It was literally, pray this, and you have to really mean it, and accept Christ into your heart. And those were those people who didn't want to do that. They would leave, and then you'd be left there, and they would walk you through, a prayer, and there was kind of a short period after where you if you wanted to, you could talk to somebody, and I don't remember if I did or not. But the fact of the matter was, I accepted Christ in my heart. I told God, I prayed, I wanted Him in my heart, I wanted Him in my life, and so I did. And I didn't really feel any different. Things just went on like normal, and I went into finishing that church camp and went home. Continued doing the same things, doing everything I could to not be home, because home wasn't a safe place. And come up to I literally continued life, and I got into my senior year of high school, and actually it was my junior year. It was my junior year of high school. Because I was 17, and everybody around me was like, "Hey, I'm going to college," or "This is what I'm doing after school," or some of them even had jobs already that they were planning on having, once they graduated. And, so, a lot of friends were going to school and college, and I was like, well, I'm going to college, and I wanted to go to college, because I wanted to be something better than what my parents were, and not because everybody it was the cool thing to do, because I was never one of the cool kids. I was just a regular Joe, and so I actually enrolled into a 2-year college that was associated with the church that I grew up in. And just like the church that I grew up in, it was lukewarm. They had the requirement. You have to go to church on Sundays, and we have to, be able to verify that. But other than that, really, it was just college. It was it's what it was. So I already decided that's the school I wanted to go to, but I had no way to pay for it. And my parents were like, we didn't go to college, and we ain't paying for it. And I said, good enough, I'll figure it out. So my father was in the military for 23 years, and he really didn't give me anything except a work ethic. That's the only good thing I think I ever got from my father. So I decided, I don't have like great, awesome grades, and I don't have scholarships, and I don't have really anything. And so what I did, okay, I'm going to pay for college. I saw an ad for $10,000 for college from the National Guard. And I'm like, well, at least that's part, and I can figure out maybe student loans or something. And so that was my plan. So my junior year of high school, having accepted Christ into my heart, but not really doing much there on that front. As a matter of fact, I was talking about Christmas real quick. I'll go back. In my home, we had a few Bibles. Nobody ever opened them up. Not on Christmas, not on Easter, nothing. We didn't open those. We went to church, we brought them, and I don't remember us even opening them there. But we were the type of family, and I'm sure most of the people at the church we went to church because that's what you do on Sunday. And you thought you heard from Christ, but then when you walked out the church door, you went home and went about your whatever you did, and Christ got left at church, if he was even there in the first place. So anyways, going back, I'm going to move forward again. So I joined the National Guard, went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and went through my training that I needed to go through there, and came back and went to college and continued doing that. I was in the Army National Guard for almost 16 years. And so I went back to college, and I met a lot of people, good people, at that college, and it was lukewarm. I didn't find anybody, none of my friends, nobody. Nobody was on fire for God, and that's kind of the par for the course. And so I kind of just did what they did, and it's the old lukewarm thing. I keep saying that, but it's true. And so I went to school, got my associate's degree. I went to decided that I was going to be a physical education teacher, and went to a state school. And my first couple of days, I met this beautiful, awesome woman, and she's now my wife. So this isn't her testimony, this one's mine. And she kind of has parts in it, of course, but we're not going to bring her in on this at this point. But so we ended up dating and getting married. And while we were dating and while we were married, we're still married, we had tried some. She also kind of grew up in a similar type of situation that I did, as far as church and lukewarm, and just we tried some churches. We never, in that town anyways, found a church that was on fire. It was Sunday church, and Wednesdays were special groups and those types of thing, and so I just stayed lukewarm. But I ended up graduating from college, and we lived in a really crappy apartment. And I say crappy, I mean that's true. We went to the police department to report that our neighbor downstairs was using drugs, and it was coming up into our apartment. And needless to say, while we were there, I had graduated and I was looking for employment, and they were hiring. And the officer that I spoke to was like, "Hey man, we're hiring here, come in and test, it's free and whatever." And so we left after making the report, and my wife told me, I looked at her on the way out the door, and I was like, being a police officer, I never really thought about that. I mean, I didn't go to school for it. I mean, never had any problems with the police. I just really hadn't thought about that. And she's like, "Well, the look on your face, you're going to do that." So I did. And so I started my career as a police officer after I went through all the testing and went through all the background check, polygraph, the whole works. Most police officers go through more security clearance and background checks than the President of the United States. And don't get me started on that part. But anyway, that was the beginning of a 20-year career for me. And my wife and I moved to Georgia after I was a cop there for quite a few years, and we went to a church, and this church was on fire. This church was on fire. Now, this was the church, mind you, it was a Pentecostal type church, and the speaking in tongues thing kind of creeped me out. It was something I wasn't familiar with. Still not really sure where I'm at on that these days, but the church itself, the pastor was on fire. A lot of the people in the church on fire. And like I said, it was a Pentecostal church, and there were people in that church. Obviously, a lot of them celebrated Christmas and Easter, but there were some people in that church that said, "No, We don't celebrate Christmas, and we don't celebrate Easter. And for my wife and I, that kind of dropped a little seed, planted a seed, if you will. And I'm going to move this camera just a little bit. And so for us, you know, we really enjoyed going to that church. And my wife to this day tells me that was when I had the best, she thought that I had the best, up to that point, the best attitude, the best relationship with God that she could tell. And, you know, it's contagious. The fire of God is contagious. You know, it starts out as a flame, and I'd have to say that I was too. And, you know, I got to know the pastor pretty well. And great dude. This guy would stand up in front of the church. He was very boisterous. He was very animated. And, you know, he'd be like, you know, church service was supposed to be over 30 minutes ago, but God's got more for me to preach, and I'm going to keep on preaching. I'm going to keep on going until he has nothing else that he wants me to say. And he'd preach for like 2.5, 3 hours, man. You know, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and people were like, my Sunday church is now becoming Sunday evening church, you know. And there were people that just left, you know, but we ended up staying because, I mean, he was putting out some really good information, and we could see God speaking through him. And that church was probably the most on fire I have ever seen at a church. And it was not fake. It was real. So we ended up leaving that church. Can't even tell you why. I think it was, I don't even know. But we ended up leaving that church. And I got deployed for 22 months during that time. And 22 months is a very, very long time to be gone. Had I not had such a wonderful, caring, strong wife, I don't think anyone else would have been able to endure that. And it was hard on me, and it was hard on my kids, and it was hard on her. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you, as a former military person, that when you go on a deployment, you're really focused on doing your job and getting the job done so you can go home. And your family, who is at home, ends up putting up with more stress, more everything that you're gone. They don't know what you're doing. They don't know where necessarily you're at. And they foot more of the bill than you do, being the person that's deployed. And that is the honest truth. You know, I enjoyed my military service. I don't think my family really did so much, but they paid for it. They paid for it. Just as much as I did, if not more. So, came back from that deployment and got back into my law enforcement career because, well, the place wouldn't hold my job for that long, and that's understandable. I wouldn't make them hold my spot that long anyway. Long story, a little bit shorter anyway. The housing market crashed in 2008/2009, and that I was one of the many hundreds of thousands, possibly even millions of people that lost our home. We were homeless, so to speak. No, not so to speak. We were homeless. We had no place to live. Even the job I had wasn't really paying much of the bills at that point. So we left Georgia and came back to Kansas. And we came back to Kansas because we had family here. And we went back from a church that was on fire to a church that was lukewarm. And I have not found a church since I've been back here in over 20 years, almost 20 years now. I have yet to see a church that was on fire. I haven't seen one. And if I'm calling you guys out, I'm calling you out. I went to lots of churches, and it was the same thing. Who are you? What do you do? Where do you work? You know, those types of things. And that's where your status came from. It wasn't that that you loved God and you had God in your life and you were living what God had put out in the Torah and, you know, the covenants that He has with us. Are you living those things? It wasn't anything about that. Again, go to church on Sunday. Sometimes you may go on Saturday or Sunday, and then as soon as you walk out, God gets left at the church. That's how we were back into that again. And my wife, the wonderful person that she is, she had a friend, and she was studying some end time things. And I had come home from work. I think it was either on lunch or at the end of the day. I'd come home from work anyways. And she said that she had been studying this particular topic. And she said, "You got to read this. You got to read this. It makes sense." And I'm like, okay. So I literally just picked up the Bible and started reading what she told me to. And I can't tell you where it's at because I don't remember those types of things. I've never been able to just sit there and quote Bible verses. I just know that it's in the Bible. And it's the truth. So, paraphrasing, the passage that she had me read basically said that God was talking and saying, "Do not worship me as you would other gods." And it says basically do not go into the forest, cut down a tree, affix it with a wooden base, bring it home, affix it with a wooden base, and decorate it with silver and gold. And the only thing in my mind that says what that is a Christmas tree. I've had people who've debated me and said, "Oh no, it's a totem pole, it's a whatever." I don't care what it is. I say it's a Christmas tree, but it's an idol nonetheless. It's break it down to being something simple. It's an idol. Don't do it. God said, don't do it. And it was like, uh-oh, you got me. I did it. I've been doing it my whole life. I grew up with it. I was doing it every year. I was comfortable with it, I guess. And, you know, now that I think about it, my wife and I actually had been convicted before that because we were like, we're not celebrating Christmas. We're going to call it Jesus' birthday. And we would actually celebrate Jesus' birthday with a birthday cake and everything. And we were kind of on the process of being convicted of that. And that just kind of was the last nail in the coffin, if you will. And my wife and I and the kids, we made a mad dash around the house. We scoured every nook and every cranny, and don't ask me what a cranny is because I don't know, but it's what we say. And we filled our trash hopper full of everything, including the Christmas tree, the garland, the little ball things you put on there, the lights, everything. It didn't matter if it had sentimental value, it was gone. Trash hopper was full, overflowing. And we took the trash hopper out to the curb, and my wife said to me, she said, "Did you feel that?" And I sure did. We could feel there was a release, a freedom that had come over the house, like something had left, an entity had left or something. It was like, you could feel it. It was amazing, and that kind of got us going. And so we thought that, if that's what God wants, is us to not celebrate Christmas and actually celebrate Him, not some little drummer boy who sings a song. That never happened. But we started moving on into things like Easter. And as a matter of fact, we were talking about it at lunch one day. We were sitting at our dining room table, and we were sitting there eating bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwiches. And we had discussed starting to follow, what we saw in the Bible as God's law, the Torah, and all of the laws that He's put out for us. And it's kind of a funny, it's true. That's how we did it. And we decided that we'd do some more research. We started doing more research, and we found out that Easter is another word for Easter. Easter is Ishtar. Wow, they're almost the same word. Those holidays are Christ being hijacked. People bringing in traditions of men and hijacking what Christ is actually about and turning it into something that's pagan. They're all pagan. I'm not going to tell you the whole deal, but look up Ishtar and Easter and find out that it is, in fact, a pagan fertility holiday. And everything that is entwined with it will make your stomach turn, and if it doesn't, well, you got issues, man. But that's the truth, and it's in front of your face. My wife and I have always had, since then, a conviction to follow God as it is in the Bible, as He has told us, and as it is written. And so we started pulling away from the Sunday church kind of thing, and we started moving towards the Messianic Hebrew roots movement. And we ended up switching churches to another congregation, and we met some nice people and some people who I'd met in the past that were going there, and they're great people, but the congregation and the people are not on fire. They weren't on fire. We had been to this church that, I'm telling you, it was like a 100,000-pound propane tank that had been lit on fire. This church was on fire. And from, every other church we went to was compared to that, and nobody was on fire. Not a lick. At the Messianic church that we went to, sorry about that, I had to do something, but the Messianic church we went to, actually we went to two of them. One of them, it was the same church service every Saturday. It was the same thing over and over, and it was obviously traditions of men, mostly, and nobody got fed there. We didn't get fed there. We went to another church that was a Messianic type church, and we didn't get fed there very much, and half the people were still celebrating Easter and Christmas and then celebrating Shabbat, and you can't be on both sides of the fence. My wife and I, we get it. You can't be on both sides of the fence, because if you do, well, that's an uncomfortable spot if you're sitting in the middle of the fence. And the Bible says that your yes be yes and your no be no. That means you're either on one side or the other. Pick one. That's really what it comes down to. Pick one. So here we were, shopping around again, and we found ourselves at another church, and this was a Christian church. Now there may be some things out of order here, but I'm doing the best that I can to remember how it went. We went to it was a mega church in the town that we currently live in. A mega church. Like, they had on a regular Saturday. They had Saturday services and Sunday services, and the reason is because they had so many people. There was like 5,000 people that would attend this church just on a Sunday, and they had to overflow to Saturday because they had so many people. This is a mega church. I mean, this church was huge, and it was something I had never experienced. So you would go to this church, and they had a place in there, a coffee bar, where you could get your frozen lattes and the whole foo-foo coffee thing. Don't get me wrong, foo-foo coffee's okay. I'm saying it. Foo-foo coffee's okay. But it was put there to not only generate profit for the church or the organization that was running the whole thing, but it was there to set a mood. And they had a huge indoor kids playland where kids would go play during the church service, and they had all this stuff. And they had a praise and worship band, which the music quality was great. They had, the whole band. It was like walking into a concert, and it was very entertaining. They did a lot of praise and worship stuff, and they even did a few secular songs, and that's kind of where it got the hook up on me, the hook into me. There you go. And we ended up leaving that church after a while because it was something that I coined the phrase church attainment, because you went there to be entertained and kind of get some word of God, but you were among 5,000 other people and you really didn't know anybody. And it was kind of a lonely place amongst 5,000 people. I mean, I don't even remember any time ever meeting the pastor of the church face to face. And so we moved on from that. We ended up having a home church where we started meeting with other Torah followers. And I'm not saying Torah observant, because you can observe the Torah all you want, but if you ain't doing it, then you're just a reader. You have to follow it, not just read it. So we started doing that. Well, I actually found myself in a weird spot because I never found myself as being the ministerial type person. But I kind of got pushed into that position, and I wasn't necessarily the best at it, and I don't find myself as being, and even being on this channel, I'm not a really, I don't find myself being a great minister, if you will. I've always been the lead by example, and that's the military in me, lead by example. And so we did that for a while, and people kind of come in and kind of go out, and people finally stopped coming, so we started doing our own thing again. And I'll honestly tell you that your family, the family that you live with, they're really, they can really make you or break you. And my family is a really great family, because they've been with me and I've been with them through all the trying to find God in all these churches, and finding out that God really isn't in the churches. The people leading the churches, they run it like a business, and it's all about getting people in so they can get tithes and get paid and pay the bills and all that stuff. And so we don't do that anymore. We literally, on Shabbat, because we observe Shabbat, we don't observe it, we do Shabbat. We literally do our own Bible study, and we're willing to meet with other people, and we have been recently meeting with other people to celebrate Shabbat and get into God's Word. Really get into it, and it's awesome. So I'll tell you that going back to 2019, I was coming up on my 20-year mark as a police officer. I'd already gotten out of the military a couple years before at 16 years. But September 27th, 2019, I had a life event that God allowed to happen that changed my entire life. I'm talking dead stop, turn around, go the other way. I had a stroke because I was born with a hole in my heart, that coincided with a thing that happened in the military, and I ended up having a blood clot go into my brain, which took out, sorry, this is really hard for me. It took out a lot of the vision, most of the vision in my left eye, and I can kind of see things through that. Sometimes I can't see anything, and there's some other issues that go along with that. But I also lost some of the vision in my right eye. I'm not legally blind, so to speak, but it makes it very, very, very difficult. And you wouldn't want me driving a patrol car out on the street or responding to a crime where things are happening and I can't see them. So I had the stroke, and from that point on, my wife and family and I endured about 8 months-ish of going to doctor's appointments and trying to get things repaired, including the hole in my heart, therapies, doctors, the whole deal. Just like other people do with other things that happen to them. And it was God's will that I get out of law enforcement. And I wasn't willing to do that. I was fighting God by trying to do all these therapies and doing all these things, and to no avail. Nothing got better, except for having the heart surgery. That fixed a few things, but it wasn't going to fix my vision. And I ended up having to retire medically from my career that I'd spent most of my life doing, and where I was comfortable and doing what I really liked. And God made a way for that to happen in such a way that I can spend time with you guys making these videos and sharing what I know with you. And the point being about that is this: when God has a plan for you, Jonah and the whale, there's a story for you. When God has a plan for you, you can fight it all you want. You are no match. I'm no match for God's will. He has a plan for you, and it's going to happen. He made it happen for me, and I fought with everything I had. And God's will was for me to be here with you today, telling you about myself, telling you my story. And I finished that career, and I don't regret it one bit. It was time. God said it was, and it was probably a good idea to be out at that time anyway. But so that's where I'm at, guys. I'm glad I got out of the career that I was in. I would have not taken the jab. I would not have worn a mask. I refuse to. I know everybody's got their own opinion, but my opinion counts to me. My opinion is that the jab, the stick, the whatever you want, the broccolini, if you will, it's the mark of the beast, guys. It is. There are people all over the world, Australia, Canada, they're being forced to take these things. They're literally kids being bussed over to places to get this stick. There are places where you cannot buy, you cannot sell, you cannot go to work. Here in the town I live in, there are people losing their jobs because they refuse to, for whatever their reasons are, not take the jab. Good for them. I hope they take it for the reason that they know that basically places a barrier between you and God, because you no longer become like God. I say not like God, but got one of God's people, because you were created in His image, and that ruins your DNA. So I'll probably get kicked off the channel for that if I don't edit it out, but I don't care. It's the truth. I will not wear a mask, and if you ask me my opinion on that, here it is. One, they don't work for what they say they're for. They are a sign of obedience and a sign of slavery. They want to know publicly, outwardly, who is going to follow their dictate, because it's not a law. It's not a law. A mandate is not a law. I guarantee you cannot be convicted of a mandate. They'll find a law that applies for something else you did, but a mandate is not a law. It's basically saying, I told you to do this. And so, anyways, I'm going to continue on with putting out as much content as I can. You kind of know where I'm at. You know a little bit about me. You don't know all the details, and that's okay, because that's my testimony. That is the truth, and it is finally done. I can't believe it's taken me this many tries to get it out and get it right, but it's finally done, guys. And so I want you to feel free to comment, subscribe, like the video, and I will tell you that if this ends up getting banned, we will be starting a Rumble channel. They seem to be more free speech, and don't get me started on that at this point. Guys, I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution, and I want God to work through me and use me for whatever He wants me to do. And they're not going to shut me up. So we'll keep working on getting this content to you. Guys, thank you for spending time with me and having letting me have your ear. And I appreciate it, and have a good day.